Yeah, so we're a family with three boys, two of whom are birth children and one of whom is adopted. As this interview is going to be made publicly available online, we're not going to use the real name of our adopted son, although many of you watching will know him. So we're going to refer to him as Tertius, which is the name that we used whilst we were waiting to adopt before we knew who he would be. Fiona likes her Latin, and it means third, as in our third child.
Adoption is so powerful, isn't it? And we've seen as we've looked at the Bible how it affects our relationship with God. And for you, it also affects your relationship with your children. Maybe you could tell us more about this, the preparation for adoption that you had.
Yeah, so adoption is not something that we had really planned. We had two birth children and we were settled and content with that. With hindsight, we can look back and see things in our lives which God might have been using to prepare us for adoption. But the first time I think we were consciously aware of it was when Fiona felt prompted at an adoption Sunday service, a little bit like this one, though not online, a number of years ago now. She spoke to me, I think I said I would pray about it. She encouraged me to read Krish Kandiah's book called Home for Good. And I read most of the book. I remember thinking this is a great thing to do and I'd like to encourage other people who God might be calling to foster or adopt. But I didn't think it was for us. Until very near the end of the book. I don't think there was anything specific in the book, but I started to feel that God was prompting me as well. And although we didn't know it then, this was just the time that Tertius was being born, and it felt like God was waking us up to adoption, knowing that this boy who'd come into the world would need a safe and loving family.
I decided you wanted to start this adoption journey. You'd read, you'd spent plenty of time praying for children in care, and then on the day of your adoption panel where you were approved as adoptive parents, God seemed to speak to you through a piece of artwork. Tell us more about that.
Yes, I've got it here. So in this picture, I love the calmness of the sea, but I also see the dark clouds overhead, which suggests that a storm is coming. And I think we could never have known how intense the storm would be when we adopted Tertius. But in the midst of that storm, there have been occasional moments of calm like this when we've been able to take a step back and reflect that God has been the rock that we're holding on to, and that he is unshaken even as the waves have crashed over us.
So I think otherwise, often family problems that lead to children needing to be taken into care are generational. So you look back through and you see their parents, birth parents were in care, potentially grandparents, and there's just lots of generational mess. And as we learnt more about Tertius and his family, we really felt God was talking to us through Isaiah 61, and particularly verse 4, where it speaks of rebuilding the ancient ruins and restoring the places long devastated, that they will renew the ruined cities that have been devastated for generations. And we come back to that verse again and again and are holding on to it, that it's the promise over Tertius's life that the devastation of the generations in his family will be restored and healed in him.
Me to see Tertius in your life. However, I know it's been a costly journey too. Maybe you could share something of this.
Yeah, so in the UK, children are very seldom put up for adoption voluntarily. They're normally forcefully removed from their birth family after something pretty major has gone wrong and all other options have been exhausted. So without going into specific details of Tertius's past, almost all children who are adopted have experienced significant trauma of one kind or another. So when you adopt a child, you don't just welcome them into your family, you also invite in massive pain and hurt, which has lots of implications not only for the child, but also for the whole family. Their trauma comes with them. Adopted children also often act younger than their actual age in terms of their behaviour, which means that they need a much higher level of parental supervision and input. So our home life is often messy, chaotic and exhausting, with emotions running high every day. It's the mission that we feel God has called us to, but it's often all-consuming and rarely leaves capacity for anything else. It can feel very lonely. We've had to let go many things that normal families might take for granted, and it's massively affected our ability to be actively involved in church as well, which might be why some of you watching this feel that you don't know us very well. But we do want to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting us and for bearing with us during this time.
So there is some joy in the chaos too. Nothing really beats seeing the healing in Tertius's life and how he's developed, how he's settled and knows his place amongst us. He is very certain of it at times, and sometimes we see it less clearly than those people looking in. So it is good to be reminded of where he's come from and what people see. But when he sings a song about loving us and that we love him, and when his emotions that can be all over the place are calmed by a cuddle in our arms because he knows he's safe, and when he seeks a cuddle just because, and when he's content and secure, it means more than words can really express, and probably more than those same situations with our birth children, because we know where he's come from and the mountains he's climbed with us to get there. We know there are going to be more storms and sheer cliffs to climb, but there is joy and light in the chaos, at least sometimes.
Yeah, and it's also had a big effect on our two birth children, as you would imagine. It's one thing for us to be hit, shouted at or spat upon, but it seems particularly unfair when it happens to them, as it was our choice to sign up for this and not theirs. Overall, they have welcomed him into our family extremely well, and we pray that ultimately God is using this to grow compassion in them and to give them a lived out picture of the gospel. We're aware that God adopting us into his family was at huge cost to his son Jesus, but he values relationship with us so highly that he thinks it was worth that cost.